In 1215, Magna Carta had been sealed for the first time. Even the King of England was not above the law. But King John refused to accept defeat. Soon, he began breaking the promises he had made. For the barons, this was nothing less than betrayal. A political crisis was becoming a civil war. England was changing, but this new chapter would be written in blood. In 1216, King John died. England's future now rested on a 9-year-old boy. But the kingdom was still divided. The rebellion had not ended, and England stood on the edge of civil war. France saw an opportunity. Prince Louis crossed the Channel, hoping to claim England's crown. England was no longer facing only rebellion. It was now fighting to survive a foreign invasion. In 1217, England's future would be decided on the streets of Lincoln. Leading the Royal Army was William Marshall, a legendary knight determined to save the kingdom. The French lines collapsed. The rebellion that had nearly destroyed England was finally beginning to fall apart. England had survived, but peace remained fragile, and the struggle between the crown and the nobles was far from over. Years passed. Henry III was no longer a child. He now ruled England with absolute authority. Heavy taxes, costly royal projects, and growing dissatisfaction pushed both the nobles and the people toward open resistance. Then, a new leader emerged, Simon de Montfort, prepared to challenge the king himself. England stood once again on the brink of civil war. In 1264, England marched toward another civil war. The Battle of Lewes would decide the fate of the kingdom. The unimaginable had happened. King Henry III had been captured by his own subjects. In 1265, Simon de Montfort summoned a new parliament. For the first time, representatives from towns joined the nobles and clergy. But one man refused to surrender. Prince Edward escaped captivity and prepared to reclaim his father's kingdom. In August 1265, Prince Edward struck back. The fate of England would be decided at Evesham. Refusing to surrender, Simon de Montfort fought to the very end. His army was completely surrounded. The rebellion was crushed. King Henry III regained his throne, and royal authority was restored. But after Evesham, one name echoed across England: Prince Edward, the future king who would reshape the kingdom forever. In 1272, Prince Edward became King Edward I, a ruler determined to unite Britain under one crown. Edward wasted no time. His first objective was the conquest of Wales. Across Wales, Edward built mighty castles. They became symbols of English power. But beyond the northern border, another kingdom refused to submit. Scotland was preparing to fight. By 1290, Scotland had no king. The kingdom was descending into chaos. The Scottish nobles turned to Edward I, asking him to settle the dispute, but Edward wanted far more than peace. Edward demanded that Scotland recognize him as its overlord. Many obeyed, but not everyone. Because soon, one man would unite Scotland and challenge the greatest king in Britain. In 1297, William Wallace rose against English rule. His rebellion would inspire an entire nation. At Stirling Bridge, the English army suffered a crushing defeat. Scotland had proven that England could be beaten. Edward I answered with overwhelming force. Determined to crush the rebellion, he marched north once again. Wallace was captured and executed, but his death only strengthened Scotland's determination to remain free. In 1306, Robert the Bruce was crowned King of Scots. The fight for Scotland was far from over. Edward I refused to recognize Bruce. He gathered another army, determined to end the rebellion forever. But before reaching Scotland, Edward I died. The king who had dreamed of conquering Britain never saw his final victory. With Edward gone, Robert the Bruce seized his chance. Scotland was ready to fight for its freedom once again. In 1314, England invaded Scotland once again. The two kingdoms would clash at Bannock. Before the battle, Robert the Bruce inspired his men. His fearless leadership lifted the spirit of every Scottish warrior. The English cavalry could not break the Scottish lines. The mighty English army collapsed in defeat. Bannockburn changed history. Scotland had won its greatest victory, and England's dominance had been shattered. With Scotland temporarily contained, England turned its attention across the Channel. A far greater conflict was about to begin. Edward III believed he had a rightful claim to the French crown. France strongly rejected that claim. In 1337, England and France entered a conflict that would last for more than a century. For generations, England and France would battle for power. The 100 Years' War was only beginning. In 1346, England and France met on the fields of Crécy. A single battle would change medieval warfare forever. Thousands of English longbows filled the sky with arrows. The legendary French cavalry could not break through. The French army collapsed. Europe witnessed the end of the Knights' unquestioned dominance. Crécy made England a military power, but an even greater enemy was already approaching Europe. Not war, but disease. 1 year after Crécy, Edward III captured Calais. It would remain England's gateway to continental Europe for more than 2 centuries. Then, a silent enemy arrived, not an army, but the Black Death. Within only a few years, millions perished. England, like the rest of Europe, was devastated. The plague slowed the war, but it did not end it. A new generation would soon return to finish the fight. In 1415, King Henry V crossed into France. Despite hunger, disease, and exhaustion, his army kept marching. Near Agincourt, the English faced overwhelming odds. The French army outnumbered them by several times. The muddy ground slowed the French advance. Then the English longbows once again decided the battle. Against all expectations, Henry V achieved one of England's greatest military victories. His triumph at Agincourt would become legend for centuries to come. By 1420, England stood closer than ever to victory. Henry V had forced France. The Treaty of Troyes recognized Henry V as the heir to the French throne. England seemed on the verge of ruling 2 kingdoms. Then, tragedy struck. In 1422, Henry V died unexpectedly. His dream was left unfinished. The English crown now belonged to the infant Henry VI. England's greatest victory was suddenly thrown into uncertainty. By 1429, England stood on the verge of total victory. Only one city still stood in its way. Then, a young peasant girl appeared. Joan of Arc claimed she had been sent to save France. Against all expectations, the siege was broken. For the first time in years, England was forced to retreat. The victory at Orléans changed the course of the Hundred Years' War. England's long-held advantage was beginning to disappear. In 1430, Joan of Arc was captured. England's allies had finally seized France's greatest symbol of hope. She was accused of heresy and brought before an English-backed court. The verdict had already been decided. In 1431, Joan of Arc was burned at the stake. England believed her death would end the French resistance. Instead, Joan became a martyr. Her sacrifice united France, and England's long dominance began to crumble. In 1453, the final battle of the Hundred Years' War began. A new weapon was changing warfare forever. French artillery shattered the English assault. After more than a century of fighting, England's campaign in France came to an end. Nearly all English possessions in France were lost. Only Calais remained under English control. The war with France was over, but a far more dangerous conflict was about to tear England apart from within. Only 2 years after losing France, England fell into civil war. The houses of Lancaster and York fought for the English crown. For 3 decades, England was consumed by bloodshed. Kings were crowned, overthrown, and killed. In 1485, Henry Tudor defeated Richard III, ending the Wars of the Roses and founding the Tudor dynasty. The Middle Ages had come to an end. A powerful new dynasty had risen. In the next chapter, England would enter the age of Henry VIII, the Reformation, and the birth of a global empire. England's greatest transformation is still ahead. In the next episode, we'll explore the Tudor dynasty, Henry VIII, and the rise of England as a global power. Subscribe and join us as we continue the complete chronological history of civilization.